Hello friends, and welcome to the Hanged Man in the Moon. If this is your first time here, welcome. Thank you for coming. I'm pleased to meet you. If you've been here before, thank you for returning. I'm truly honored. Friends, if you are a returning visitor, you know that we are in the middle of what I'm calling a different kind of Decan walk. And I'm calling it a different kind of Decan walk because it is different from most of the Decan walks that you're going to see out there on the YouTube sphere. Yes, I'm using a different system and a different set of associations of esoterica. When we say esoterica, I'm specifically speaking of the Hebrew letters, the Kabbalah, the Tree of Life, and the astrological associations. So I'm doing something different. And if you want to see how that new arrangement, or not really new, it's actually pretty old, that different arrangement works in this new setup, I have a whole series on my channel, and I'll put a card up here if you're interested in going and looking at that and seeing how things are organized and why I've organized them, reorganized them in this way. And so we have different card associations from what you will see in other places on the YouTube sphere and in other books created by wonderful creators, beautiful creators, very good information. Yes, all of that. But I'm doing something different. And I think it works pretty well. And hopefully, as you follow along, you will agree that this is also an excellent way of understanding things and gives us a different perspective. And if you know me, and you know my moniker, the Hanged Man in the Moon, you know I'm all about different perspectives. Yes? Seeing things in a different way, looking at things from a different angle. My high school English teacher told me that I was off the wall, and I'm more than just off the wall. I'm hanging upside down in proximity to the wall. Okay, so that's me, and that's what we're doing. And so we are here in the third Decan of Taurus. And what I'm going to do first is say thank you. Thank you for being here. Thank you for doing those things that you do. Thank you for hitting the thumbs up button. Thank you for subscribing to the channel. Your actions help other people find us, and our community grows because of you. And I'm deeply grateful. And I'm also deeply grateful for the comments that you leave in the comment section, because that warms my heart. It makes me feel like we are here together. And also, it's another clue for YouTube to show the channel to other people, and they find us, and hopefully they enjoy what they see. So, thank you. And what we do in this Decan walk is usually, I will start off with a recap of the previous Decan. We talked about the previous Decan, the second Decan of Taurus, in the previous video, so we would recap that, and then I would move on to this Decan, and we'd look at the Decan information just from a zodiacal perspective, and we'd look at it from the classical Hellenistic perspective, and I would also bring in information from the Egyptian tradition, because it was the Egyptians who started the idea of Decans in the first place. And if you want to see a brief discussion of that, that's on my first video. No, it's not in my first video. Well, where is it? It's somewhere. But the Egyptians, they decided to break the year, or the 360-degree cycle of time, into 36 pieces of 10. 36 pieces of 10. 10 degrees. So they had decans, and those are primarily for marking time, marking rituals, for breaking down time and what to do during those times, instead of being predictive or descriptive of people and divinatory. They weren't quite divinatory time separations, if that makes sense. Whereas the Hellenistic and other zodiacal traditions were describing characteristics of people and predictive of things that would happen, and deciding when the best time to do something non-ritualistic could be, or maybe even ritual. But they used it more broadly in a descriptive way, and the Egyptians used the breaking down of time in just a more like a clock, yeah, with interesting names and interesting figures associated to those pieces of the clock. Gosh, I hope I'm making sense. Anyways, so what happens later is that the two systems merge, and over time things develop, and now people use a very different from the Egyptians, a very different way of describing those decans. And those ideas were described in documents such as, or texts such as the Picatrix, which is, I think, from the 13th century magical text. So what happens is the Egyptian ideas filter through the Babylonians and the Indian yogic and the Hellenistic traditions, and they merge and they morph and they become something else. So I'm trying to go back to as close to what I can find for the original, the people who started this idea in the first place, and see how that might inform our Decan. And that, again, is going to be different from what other people are talking about on other channels. So we talk about the Decan, zodiacally and through the Egyptian perspective, and then we will look at the card for the Decan, the minor arcana card from the Smith-Waite deck. And then we'll look at the two major arcana cards that speak to and influence that minor arcana card. And then I pull a spread for the Decan using the three cards for the Decan to suggest prompts, which we respond to with a different tarot deck. So if you have seen previous videos, you know what I'm talking about. I'm not sure I'm describing it accurately enough for you or clearly enough for you, but that's what we usually do. This time we're doing something a little bit different because I only have one day a week that I am able to record videos. Because of my schedule at work, I had the choice to either record the video very early or post it late, a little late. And I decided to opt for recording it very early so I can have it all ready and upload it a couple of days before this new Decan begins. Because of that, I'm recording this at the beginning of the second Decan of Taurus. So I haven't lived through the second Decan of Taurus enough to be able to speak confidently in a recap kind of way. Yes? But let me just give you a little reminder of what we're coming from when you see this video. Yeah? The second Decan of Taurus qualities were things, remember that means Mercury in Taurus, because the second Decan of Taurus in our system for this Decan walk is keyed to Virgo. And Virgo's ruler is Mercury, so we have Mercury in Taurus. Yes? So, because of that, we have ideas, thought, Mercury, the thinker, the communicator, the messenger, the trickster also, right? The magician, but the thinker and communicator. So, thinking about and making decisions about practical matters, right? but we are focused on producing concrete results. We're not interested entirely in the communication. The communication is to produce concrete results. Yes? We might want to focus on financial thoughts and thinking about finances, which I have already noticed as being a key player as we just entered this decan. There was a sudden, for me, a financial what? How do you say this in English? a problem around finances that suddenly arose on the first day of the decan. Really, I woke up, new day, new decan, and there it was. Yeah, from the United States. And living here in Korea, it means that things are not as easy to solve from a distance. So I did notice that communication, finances did spring up for me, not enough for a full recap. Okay, so from the Egyptian decan, we got the idea of writing things down, right? Our story. What story do we want to leave about ourselves? What positive impact do we have, and does our story have on the lives of others, right? How have our lives been able to enrich those around us? Are things to think about during this decan that we are now ending when you see this video. Right? The major arcana card was the Five of Pentacles for us, and that's things like struggle, because we're fussy, we're critical, we're neat, Virgo aspects, yes, we're hard workers, and maybe our Tauran selves don't feel as fulfilled as we feel like we should be fulfilled, right? Because we're fussy, we're critical, we're analyzing, and it's just not good enough, right? And the two major arcana cards that have come and influenced this were the Lover card, or the Lover's card, and the Judgment card for Mercury. So we have, on one side, our individuality, our self-development, our enthusiasm, passion, and willpower of the Tauran, right? Our earthiness and stability, and our yearning to work the land, to pull the plow, to get things done at our own speed, with our own willpower. No one's going to push us around. No one's going to make us move at a different speed than what we want. Combined with the wisdom and the intelligence and the communicative ability of Mercury. So there's all of that going on. Mercury wants to be a little bit fast. Taurus says, no, I'm going to go at my pace. There's a little bit of a struggle there. The Virgo aspect wants detail. This is not good. This is not good. This is not good. And Tauran says, but I want to enjoy, but this is not right. And this is not right. And should be better. And right. There's all of that going on. And so I had predicted that this decan that we're coming out of would be a little uncomfortable, if at best, if not downright, right? So how has it been for you? Hopefully it will be better than I'm anticipating, but at this point, it's not starting off all that great for me. Hopefully it has been better for you. I'd love to hear from you in the comments below. Yes? Okay, so that's the recap that I can do at this time. And maybe I'll be able to post a little bit later on in the week. Yes? So, let's start off with this decan. And I will start off with what? Yes, let me show you the Oracle card for the next decan, the third decan of Taurus, which is keyed to Capricorn, which is ruled by Saturn. So we have Saturn in Taurus. Saturn in Taurus. Let me show you that Oracle card right now. So here's the small version of that Oracle card which you just saw. And you saw that the title of the card was Ostentation. Yeah? So that sounds a lot better than the Oracle card we had for the last decan. Yes? And the card you see here, you can see at the bottom there's Saturn in Taurus, right? On the bottom of the card, there's an image of Venus riding a sea bull. Do you see that? Surrounded by cherubim. I don't know if you saw them, those little figures flying around the sea bull. And there are dolphins, and this is the pleasure-loving nature of Taurus, down there at the bottom. And it's interesting because this is a sea bull, but we were just saying that this Decan of Taurus is keyed to Capricorn, and Capricorn is a creature that is half goat and half fish, right? So a sea goat, but here we have a sea bull. Interesting? No? Okay. So above we have a rich woman who's driving a golden chariot. That's what the author describes it as. It's supposed to be a golden chariot drawn by two white bulls. And so that's the more practical, I got money, I'm moving forward, I'm showing off my wealth. I don't need just one bull, I've got two, right? A little bit more of that ostentation. Does that make sense? So according to the author of this oracle, who does an excellent job of synthesizing, of condensing information about each one of the planets in each one of the signs, she says that this decan points to ambition served by material achievements from the ability to sense the value of things and make them grow. We can see how this thing that we are giving our attention to has value, has meaning. And we can make that value grow into something larger. Yes? There's a powerful materialism in this decan, with perhaps an obsessive concern for money. We might venture into selfishness and the need to show off, which will be interesting when you see the tarot card for this decan, yes? Keep these things in mind when we look at that tarot card. We might use other people's generosity or sponsorship for our personal needs, yeah? We might take advantage of other people's generosity to get what we want, or to get what we want done. We could use other people's generosity to uplift us, to enhance our own wealth. And although we may doing the right thing for ambition or for economics, it doesn't necessarily make us popular. Now, we may be doing things to increase our value and the value of our stuff, but other people looking at us might think, that's not such a good guy or gal or non-binary person, yes? So, we want to avoid scheming for material success. We want to avoid being conniving. That's the word I was looking for. We want to avoid conniving for our own financial or material advantage. Yes? Okay? So, we want to be careful of going into the dark side. But we could get some good results, and maybe we gotta be okay with not being as popular right now. Maybe. What do you think? And maybe showing off a little bit might not be such a bad thing. I don't mean going and flaunting in the face of somebody who cannot purchase a designer bag, the Gucci or the Prada or the Fendi that we've got, and say, look at me, I'm better than you, you are nothing, right? That's not what I'm talking about. But showing off some of the things that we enjoy. For example, I might show off a little bit my library of tarot decks a little bit more in this decan, because that's okay, and I'm not lording it over anybody and saying that I'm better than you because I got more. I could move in that direction if I'm not careful, but I don't have to do that. I can just be happy with what I have, and I'd be showing off a little bit, yeah? Maybe that's okay. Does that make sense? That might help us ease out of the difficulties we've been feeling in the previous decan. Now, let's look at the Egyptian decan card that we have for this decan, and it will be up here in just a moment. Take a look. So there it is as well, yes? The title of this is Remen Hery Sa. Remen Hery Sa. And pronunciation, don't trust me. The key word for this card for the creator of this oracle, and remember, all of the cards, all of the decks that I'm using will have links in the description box if you're interested in going to get them yourself. This is now a mass market deck. It was originally a Kickstarter, which I did not get when it was a Kickstarter. Unfortunately, I did not see the value of it then for myself, and now I do. So part of me wishes I had gotten the Kickstarter, but I'm happy with what I've got. It's a nice package. You see here what? You see a blue god and a human below the god, and the human is in what kind of looks like, what do they call those glass inverted bells? Suddenly I've forgotten what it's called. It looks like that to me, but that's not what it's supposed to be. It's supposed to be actually the god is pouring water over the human beneath them. And let's see. Oh, the subtitle for this card is The Upper Arm of Sa. The Upper Arm of Sa. Now, I don't know if you know this, but sometimes gods get ripped apart. And in Egypt, sometimes those parts of gods become other gods, right? So this part of the god, this upper arm of Sa, which was ripped off by, So Sa's arm was cut off and thrown into the sky by another god, where it became its own god. Yes, and this is that god. The card shows, but this card shows Hapt, the god of the annual Nile flooding, baptizing a devotee. So that's what's happening in this card. It's a baptism, a purification, which is why the keyword for the card is purification. And so this points to what? It points to the purifying waters of the Nile. And that can be anything from confessing our wrongdoing to somebody who we've harmed, or to something like a ritual bath. And you can think of Jewish tradition of ritual baths, ritual bathing. Also, the baptism of the Christian tradition is part of that as well. The ritual bath of cleansing, of purification could be helpful, but it could also be a confession, right? This card or this decan also points to potentially painful experience of shedding guilt or overcoming our faults. So it's not just the purification or the purging of our feelings of wrong that we have done, but also overcoming our faults in a not so comfortable way, right? But it's beneficial in the long run. It will help us in the future. So something to keep in mind for this decan, if we are showing off, if we are doing those things of the ostentation that were described by the creator of the Radiant Sun Oracle, which we saw first, we might also want to do a little bit of cleansing and purging and saying I'm sorry to those who we might have harmed. Yes? For this decan? Friends, I'm sorry, I had a little interruption. So let me get back to us. We're going to look at the books I like to refer to when we talk about the decanates, yes? The first one I want to refer to is this one, Decanates and Duads by, Francis Sekoyan and Louis Acker. They usually give some pretty good condensed information about each one of the decans. And in this decan, their description is a little bit interesting, and I'll tell you why. Okay, so how they I mentioned in the last video that they don't say that much about Taurus, which makes me think that maybe they've got something against Taurus a little bit. I'm not sure. But for the third decan of Taurus, they only have one little brief paragraph, just like they had for the second decan of Taurus. So what do they say here? Let me read to you. Now remember, we are in the third decan of Taurus, which means it's keyed to Capricorn, and Capricorn is ruled by Saturn, so we have Saturn in Taurus. But they're leaning into something else. Let me read it to you. The third decanate of Taurus is the Taurus Venus. Yeah, Venus is the ruler of Taurus. Taurus Venus, or Mars Capricorn decanate. Mars Capricorn decanate. And they call decans decanates here, okay? Why? Because Mars is exalted in Capricorn, which is true. Mars, the exaltation of Mars is Capricorn. So instead of leaning into the ruler of that sign, they're leaning into the exaltation. So they're bringing Mars into this, which is interesting. So they say that this makes the natives of this decan ambitious, organized, and cautiously aggressive in their efforts to achieve financial and emotional security. Yeah, that Martian exaltation energy adds a little more aggressiveness. Whereas Saturn is more boundaries and borders and organization, Mars is more let's get out and conquer the world. So they're leaning into that. So they also say that people born in this decan make good executives and business managers. All good. But that confused me for a moment. Why are they leaning into the exaltation rather than the ruler of Capricorn? Because again, this decan of Taurus is keyed to Capricorn. Okay, so now from the second book that I like to refer to, which is called Decanates by Bernice Prill Gebner, I think is how you pronounce it. She gives a need for each one of the decans or decanates. Yes? And she says for this third decanate of Taurus, keyed to Capricorn, we're all agreeing on the keys and the rulers and the exaltations. She says there's a need to master and discipline the physical appetite to attain spiritual growth. So we need to master our desires in order to, not just because we need to master them, but it's for the purpose of spiritual growth and to transform our stinginess into spiritual giving. Yes, the Capricorn Tauran could be have a mine kind of attitude. Remember, we were talking about ostentation, but we want to transform that into spiritual giving. So I hope we can remember all of those things we talked about. Remember what we just said, yeah, into spiritual giving, right? Also to spiritual growth. Also, what? Purification, sure. But being careful not to use other people's generosity for our personal needs. Avoid scheming for our material advantage. So all those things combined point very interestingly towards this next card. Do you know what this next card is going to be? What is the Minor Arcana card for us for this decan? Are you ready to take a look? Here it is. Were you ready for that card to show up? Yes? Spiritual giving, not being stingy, not using other people's generosity for our good for our needs, for our growth, for our advantage, right? Not using other people and their generosity. Interesting for this card, the Six of Coins or Six of Pentacles, yes? And this Six of Pentacles is for this third decan of Taurus, right? Because 1, 2, 3, the Ace, 2, and 3 are for us in this decan walk, the cardinal signs. 4, 5, and 6 are the fixed signs of Taurus. So 6 is the third decan of Taurus, 6 of Pentacles. So we have we have the cardinal aspect of fixed Earth's vital attributes entering our lives in this decan. The cardinal aspect of fixed Earth, Capricorn, Saturn. Capricorn is cardinal with Saturn. Taurus and Venus are fixed. Yes? So, also, you'll see in a little bit, I will have the Tree of Life up here on the side. Because this is a 6, we also have the Sephiroth, Tippereth, which is beauty. Right? So this card is also keyed to the Sephiroth of beauty. And it could rest here in the heart. Generosity, yes? So, because we have Saturn in Taurus, a keyword I might think of when I look at this card is an open-handed exchange. Not necessarily just pouring out the cash, but an open-handed exchange. Why? Because Saturn in Taurus is ambitious, it's organized, it's slightly aggressive to achieve financial and emotional security. We already mentioned that in that other book, right? This is an idea of masterdom. Yes, that Capricorn here in Taurus is attaining mastery. They are stubborn. They have a stubborn dedication to advancement. Capricorn wants to advance. Tauran stubbornness brings us that idea of the stubborn dedication to advancement. They might have trouble detaching from people. But they are generous with their love and their money. So they can be generous while they are determined to achieve financial success. So a question I might ask of this card is, how can material balance be restored? And often when we think of this card, the guy with the balance, there's the balance there, yeah. But we often think of the guy lording over and pouring out coin to the low people, right? But remember, Saturn is the one of rules and regulations and boundaries, but also order. And so Saturn, also the ruler of Aquarius, right? When Saturn sees an imbalance in finances, recognizes that, okay, so I have, or this person has a lot and these people don't have enough, so there needs to be more balance. There needs to be a reorganization of finances. Does that make sense? So, generosity, but dictated by rules and structures and good balance, yeah? Being the third decan of Taurus, we place the planetary ruler of that sign in his, her, their exaltation. So the ruler of Taurus is Venus. Venus is exalted in Pisces. So Venus is swimming in the water, the ocean of Pisces, right? The boundless ocean of Pisces, which kind of might freak Saturn out a little bit. But what does Venus bring to us here? Material generosity, again, is emphasized. Value shared compassionately, with care, with love. Yes? Resources flow without attachment. Now, we might have trouble detaching from other people, but we are able to give without attachment. And that giving, remember we're talking about Venus in Pisces, that boundless Pisces, giving dissolves the boundaries between me and you, between he and she, between they and they. Yeah? So I think that brings us a much more spiritually elevated perception of this card, which I think some people look on a little harshly. And I think we can get in an upright position something grander, something more philanthropic, rather than the rich giving out pittance to the poor. Yeah? Does that make sense? So, this decan begins looking pretty good, although we do have the potential to be aggressive, to be to move into the dark side, and instead of being the what spiritually elevated, generous one, begin using the generosity of others for us, right? So we want to be careful of that. If we can be careful of that, we have a fairly positive decan looking at us in the very, very near future, depending on when you see this video. Yes? Okay, so that looks good. That looks very good. Now, we've got two cards to inform this one, right? We've got the Tauran card, which was the Lovers. You've seen that for the last two videos, but we've got a new one for Saturn. And you might be surprised by that one if you have not seen my other videos about my my rediscovered associations to Tarot. So, are you ready? Let me show you the three cards for this decan right now. Okay, so were you surprised to see the High Priestess here? You might be. You might have been thinking to yourself, wait a second, no, the High Priestess is a different planet. Okay, so go take a look at my series to find out why I'm associating the High Priestess with Saturn. I've got a pretty in-depth, not too long, but in-depth discussion about the reasoning behind that and why that is so with this rediscovered set of associations with esoterica and the tarot. Okay? So, she is standing in for Saturn for us. And here you have those three cards. And also, the Tree of Life is there on your right. Yes? Right? And you can see there now that the sixth Sephirah, Sephiroth, is for the Six of Pentacles, for all the sixes, yes? And as Tiphereth, it's also keyed to the Sun, the planet in the sixth Sephiroth. Why am I having such trouble with that today? The planet for the sixth Sephiroth is the Sun, which is interesting because the Sun doesn't really show up much in this whole spread, but we do have that for the sixes. So, beauty, the beauty of generosity maybe, the beauty of sharing resources. You see the lovers connects, well, we'll get there. So let's start off with the lovers. Yes? The lovers. Taurus. Taurus gives us fixed Earth's vital energies entering this decan. Remember, it's the cardinal aspect of fixed Earth. And the positive traits of the lover card associated with Taurus is individuality, introspection, self-development, and truthfulness, right? And it is associated with the Hebrew letter Vav, and that connects Keter to Binah. Do you see that up there? Keter and Binah, the monad, the divine oneness, the essence, connects to our understanding through the lover card, the lover's card. And Vav is a hook or a spear or something that attaches something to something else. And it's the second active letter of the tetragrammaton, Yod He Vav He, so it's a masculine letter, but it's the second masculine letter. And it's also associated with the rune Kanaz, which is enlightenment. It is visions, revelations, inspiration, and wisdom. Remember, Chokmah on the tree of life is wisdom. But it is the step in between Keter and Binah. Goes Keter, Chokmah, Binah, right? So that wisdom is here in Kanaz. The lover's card is connection. It's continuation. It's linking heaven and earth. And at that part of that first step of linking the divine, ephemeral, undifferentiated all to this hyper-differentiated physical form is going into wisdom. Going through wisdom into understanding. And so we connect directly into understanding with this decan. I'm sorry, with this card, the Tauran card. Because it's Tauran, there is strength and power. There's an untamable wild ox in all of us in this decan, or in this sign. There's a mighty, untamable force within all of us, perhaps, at this time. There's an earthiness and a stability to this decan through the lover's card. And when it reaches full bloom, we can find our prosperity, we can find our sense of place and resources available. And it brings us the desire to work the land, to make the land prosper for us and for all. Yeah, all of those things are part of the lover's card through the Tauran zodiacal sign. Yes? So that informs the Six of Pentacles by giving us that recognition of our understanding of wisdom, our spiritual desire for enlightenment and revelation and reaching up and connecting heaven and earth. It also informs our desire to work and get our hands in the earth to create and to cultivate. Yes? And then on the other side, we have the High Priestess, which is here for Saturn. Why? Because Saturn, if you look at the ancient way of understanding the universe, the farthest planet that we were able to perceive was Saturn. So the way we conceived of the universe was, there's the material realm which extends until Saturn, and Saturn sits on the border between the material and the non-material. It describes and inscribes the orbit, the circle that is the boundary between the matter and the non-matter. And it guards that portal. It keeps watch on that separation, or that liminal space between here and the not here. Does that make sense? So that's a wonderful description of a characteristic of the High Priestess, isn't it? She sits there on the portal between the material and the spiritual. Now, some people see her as a watchdog, and I do not. I see her as the librarian, if you will. And she holds a book on her lap in the Smith-Waite deck, right? Well, also in the Marseille deck, the Popes has a book on her lap. So she's the librarian who knows that there's an archive with delicate information behind that not everybody should be allowed to get to. But if you go and you ask and you look like you can handle things carefully and properly, the librarian will allow you to have access to that information. They're not the ones who are just pushing everybody away, right? They check. They make sure. Are you ready? If you're not ready, you could be damaged just as well as the material, right? As far as a material librarian is concerned. Yes? But in the more spiritual sense, the spiritual is not going to get damaged. But if you're not ready to encounter that spiritual vastness, you will be damaged. So Saturn is there to make sure that everything is in its proper place and nothing gets damaged and everything is in order and everything is well. If we can think of Saturn in that way, we can think of Saturn having the High Priestess as a representative. Yes? So, the High Priestess is associated with the Hebrew letter Bet. And Bet, you can see on the Tree of Life, is the one that connects, remember, Chokmah to Chesed. She connects wisdom to loving kindness. And that seems like a perfect place for the High Priestess to reside, yes? Connecting wisdom of the non-physical, of the divine, of the spiritual, to a little bit more embodied, the loving kindness of Chesed. Yes? Which means what? What does that mean? Well, let's first talk about the letter Bet. Bet kind of looks like this, and it is the Hebrew letter for house, home, also architecture. So you can think of the High Priestess having a temple. You can see the pillars holding up a roof above her. Yes? So that kind of a structure, a dwelling for the divine in the physical realm, maybe. A universal home as well. Also, creation and duality. And you can see in the card here, we have the two columns, Boaz and Joachim, duality. All very interesting. The duality also of male and female is represented here for the High Priestess. Blessings and the world as a home. Not the spirit, but spirit comes in and resides here through the High Priestess, through Saturn in the material realm. Yes? So Saturn also allows, is the portal through which spirit enters the material realm, and the material realm can interact with the spiritual realm. All very interesting things, right? Now, the High Priestess is also associated with, for me, the rune, let's see, Uruz, yes? And Uruz is a wild ox. Remember the wild ox from Taurus? That's interesting. So Uruz is a wild ox. So it's strength, it's energy, it's speed, it's courage with understanding. Remember, Kether Hokmah Bina is understanding. So understanding is here in the rune of Uruz as well. And determination. All very good Tauran aspects as well. Saturn, being associated with the High Priestess, is also the Sabbath planet. The planet of the Sabbath, linked with the ideas of to cease, to rest, stop working. So that could be a little bit of a problem for Taurans, right? Taurans with a Capricorn drive don't want to stop and rest. So maybe this could be a little bit of a, okay, we hear you, but there are times to stop, there are times to rest, being given to us by the High Priestess. Saturn is the planet of boundaries for the Hebrew astrologers as well, also of limitation, also of discipline, of responsibility, and the physical world. Yeah, it's matter and time of the physical world are organized by Saturn. Saturn helps bring form and structure to abstract concepts, and that'll be interesting when we get to Aquarius, who is all about these abstract concepts, and Saturn wants to bring those into form and into understanding. So that role of Saturn is indicated here in the High Priestess as well, but also in this Six of Pentacles, Decan of Taurus, right? Taurus wants to bring things into physical manifestation, right? And we want to be able to share that, but we also want to find our own security and achieve, right? Remember, achieve financial and emotional security. That's all very interesting. All very interesting. But it seems like it's going to be a strong Decan, right? With the oxen, the desire to work and achieve. But we can overcome our potential for selfishness and maybe manipulative use of other people by breaking open to our generosity and approaching our material wealth with a spiritually generous attitude. We might have trouble disassociating with other people, but maybe that's okay. Maybe our purpose at this time for this decan is to associate. Yeah, and maybe even it's to receive some generosity ourselves, but not for a manipulative what is that word? To make ourselves bigger. There's a better word for that, but to make ourselves bigger financially, enhance our wealth. Something similar to that, but there's a word I was looking for. We're not accepting generosity to enhance our wealth. But if we do find ourselves in times of not only need or desperation, but in times of lack, yes, we can be open to receiving, certainly. And we can be open to being generous if we have that blessing. Okay? Does that make sense? And there's an organizational quality to this time as well. And there's a cleansing, a purging, a confessing of wrongdoing to this Decan. And a little bit of showing off when we have to show off. And if we have to show off, maybe we can be generous with those things that we have to show off, right? So, I got 3 questions from these 3 cards. Hopefully you will be pleased with the questions that I have pulled. And if you're not, let me know in the comments below. If you would have pulled different questions, I'd love to hear from you. But I went a little bit off the wall and a little bit maybe hyper-spiritual when I pulled the questions from these cards. And what I got was, for the Lover's card, Taurus, how can we express ourselves through our holy work? How can we express ourselves through our holy work? The question I pulled from the 6 of Pentacles was, how can we participate in divine generosity? Because we remember that we are not the owners of the material realm. No matter what we think of, and the money we think that we have in the bank and the stuff we think we have in our homes, really, we are not the owners. We are the temporary stewards of those things, right? And generosity is not ours, really. It's a divine work in the world, and we participate in the divine work of generosity. So how can we do that? How can we participate in divine generosity? The question I got from the 6 of Pentacles. And then from the High Priestess, Saturn, boundaries, borders, I wanted to know what sacred boundaries would help. Because remember, we don't want to go completely Piscean, even though Venus is exalted in Pisces. We don't want to get completely Piscean and no borders, everything where there's no separation, right? Saturn still wants to have those borders. So sacred boundaries are helpful. So what sacred boundaries would help is the question. So once again, those 3 questions are, how can we express ourselves through our holy work? How can we participate in divine generosity? And what sacred boundaries would help? So let me show you the 3 cards that came to respond to those questions from the Herbal Tarot, and there will be a link in the description box below if you want to get that deck. It's a wonderful deck. Let me show you those cards and let's talk about them. Are you ready? Friends, here is the response to those 3 questions. So friends, on this side you see those 3 cards from the Herbal Tarot responding to the 3 questions. And on this side you see the enhanced Tree of Life. Because on this image of the Tree of Life in purple, you can see the associations of these 3 cards entering the Tree of Life for this Decan. Yes? Now, I don't know if that's helpful for you. I'd love to hear from you. What do you think? Is this helpful? Is it not helpful? Is it confusing? Let me know. So, these 3 cards are telling us what? How can we express our... Okay, so, when I pulled these 3 cards, I gotta tell you, I was not very happy. Yeah? How can we express ourselves through our holy work, the 10 of Swords? Yeah? How can we participate in divine generosity, the Devil? What sacred boundaries would help? The Knight of Wands, totally non-boundaried person, right? Right out. Let's go get them. Not much of a boundaries kind of court card, right? So it seemed to me that the three cards at first glance that were responding to those questions were actually saying the opposite, right? Express ourselves through our holy work. Girl, you died. You died. Yes? Participate in generosity. Mind, the devil. Yes? Boundaries. Sagittarius, let's go right out. Knight of Wands, let's go right out into battle. Let's destroy those boundaries. But then I cooled off and I sat and I thought about the more astrological associations with these cards, and I got another perspective. So let's start off with this bloody Ten of Swords, responding to the question, how can we express ourselves through our holy work? And being a 10, it also points towards Malkut, which is the earth. Yeah, it is manifestation, it's kingdom. It's the bottom of the tree, which is the top of another tree, the following tree, because the tree of life is a fractal. Yeah, so the bottom is the beginning of a new set of Sephirah. And yet it's the 10 of Swords. It could have been the 10 of Cups. It could have been the 10 of Coins, Pentacles. But no, it was the 10 of Swords, right? But what is that? So for me, that means that this is Saturn in the suit of air, in the element of air. Saturn, right? So we've got the High Priestess, Saturn. Saturn is also entering with air into our Tauran Decan, which is a little uncomfortable because air and earth are ill-dignified elements, which means that they struggle with each other. They sap each other's energy. The wind blows the earth into bits and the earth weighs down the air so it can't move, yes? So there's a difficulty here. But how can we express ourselves through our holy work? Well, for me, what we see, these swords, they're bloodying up a pristine, pure, snowy landscape, with the tree being, let me read it here. The tree's name is Ephedra, which is something first time I've seen that tree is here in this card. But for me, Saturn in air points to things like thought has penetrated everything. We've thought about everything, all possibilities. There's no further articulation that's possible. Now we've reached the limit of thought. And the meaning that we may have built up begins to collapse into silence or a reset. Yes? It's the end, but ready to become a new beginning. So how can we express ourselves through our holy work? Maybe it's to stop thinking and stop talking about it and manifest the work itself, yeah? And realize that those worries and those thoughts that we've been having, now we've had the 10 of Swords is pressure towards cessation or reperception of what is going on. And there's a potential for cognitive exhaustion if we don't just stop. And a question I might ask of this card is, what cognitive field is exhausted and must be reset? What thought processes, what worries, what perception, what have we reached the end of? And it's time to stop. Just stop and reset. And if we do that work of reset, then we can express ourselves through the holy work. Yes? Now, the creator of this card talks about this card in these ways. It's time to embrace faith and trust. Okay. Yeah? And know that this is the end of an old cycle. Right? Saturn, boundaries, ends. We're ended. It's time to end. And a new one is beginning. It's time to accept things as they are. Not struggle to change them with our minds and our thoughts and our communication. Accept things as they are. Visualize ourselves rising up and walking a new path. Right? Starting the new thing. It's not the ace yet, but it's time to stand up. And that's how we can express ourselves through our holy work, is let it go. Accept things as they are, stand up, and be ready to start the journey afresh. Yes? And this ephedra tree, what does that do? It increases the ability to take in breath, to breathe the air, right? And with that breath, taking in greater life force. Clearing the breath and clearing the mind with a deep breath, a diaphragmatic breath of cleansing breath. And remember, we had the cleansing water of the Egyptian Decan. And here we got a cleansing breath at the end of a cycle. Yeah? Yes? And that's how we can express ourselves in our holy work right now. Accept what it is. Stand up. Shake it off. Breathe. Clear. Cleanse. Get ready to move on the new leg of the journey. And so, how can we participate in divine generosity? We've got Pan. Now, this is the devil card, but in this deck it's called Pan, which might be a little nicer, a little softer. Yes? We have the Pan figure here holding a pentagram with flames around the Pan figure. It looks like the Pan figure is seated, right? And there is a plant around the Pan figure. Do you see the pointed devil tail coming off of the Pan figure? Red horns, yes? A little bit Capricorn-y. I'm sorry, Capricorn-like, I should say. Corny makes it sound like something very, very different. There's a Capricorn aspect to this devil card. But for me, the devil is not Capricorn. Yes, but what is the plant? I'm sorry, the plant is Lobelia, and we'll talk about the plant in just a moment. But how can we participate in divine generosity? Let's look at Pan as the devil. For me, Pan as the devil is Sagittarius. Why? Because the 15th letter of the Hebrew alphabet is Samek, which kind of looks like a ring. Yes? And Samek is keyed to the zodiacal sign of Sagittarius, which gives us mutable fire's vital attributes entering our spread. Yeah? Instead of the air, we have mutable fire. And so we got fire there in the card. That makes good sense, right? Samek is the Hebrew letter for a support or a prop, to prop something up, or a fish. Go figure. It's something to lean upon. It's a support, but it's shaped like a wedding ring, yeah? Which is things like protection, trust, divine support, the promise. And it connects Tiphereth and Hod. Now you can see here on the Tree of Life, it connects Tiphereth and Hod, which means it connects beauty to surrender to what is. And remember, we had that idea of surrendering to what is in this card here, right? The Ten of Swords, accepting things as they are. So we've got that a little bit emphasized here with Tiphereth connecting beauty to surrender. The rune for this devil card, or pan, would be Algiz. Yes? Which is the rune for the horned god. Also an elk, but the horned god. Yes? But the horned god for the runic cultures was a god of protection, of openness, of happiness, and a life force. So we've got those ideas here in the pan card as well. So we've got that. How do we participate in divine generosity? By leaning on supports when we need to, but being a support for others. Yes? By being open, sharing our life force, protecting others and accepting protection, accepting divine support as well. So this is a card for self-confidence and optimism, hope, and spiritual resolve, believe it or not. Yeah? The Sagittarian aspects in Hebrew astrology are an indication of the rainbow. God's covenant not to destroy the world again by water. Yes? It's also hope, it's renewal, and God's mercy after judgment. So, maybe the devil card points towards redemption after judgment. Yes? Also, Hanukkah. Yeah, the Sagittarian month is the month of Hanukkah, which is the triumph over darkness. And remember, Satan, Lucifer, is the light bearer. Originally is the triumphant one over darkness. But there's an internal struggle with Sagittarius, yes, between our higher spiritual self and our animalistic, self-centered desires, right? Sagittarius is the human horse figure. So there's the divine reaching up towards ascension and the animalistic desire of our horse nature. Does that make sense? Which we also see in the pan figure, not a horse, but a goat leg. So we have that binary desire indicated by pan as well. The higher self and the animalistic, bodily, embodied human desires. Yes? So there is the struggle there as well. So how can we participate in divine generosity? Well, we recognize that dilemma and we reach and open ourselves to the divine covenant of protection, of support, of overcoming darkness. And the creator of the Herbal Tarot says, or indicates that we should look at our personal addictive behaviors, our more animalistic side, our attachments, and also give attention to the truth of our lives. Yeah, the more, we want to recognize that symbolically animals and humans, we separate them into the more spiritual and the more earthy, right? Now that's not to say that I believe that all animals have no spirit that no animals have spirit, that animals have no divine essence. That's not what we're saying at all. But symbolically, as humans, we have our more animal desire of addictions and attachments, and we have our more divine, eternal natures who are reaching up for enlightenment and ascension, right? So, we want to give attention to the truth part of our lives and be aware of our personal addictive behaviors and attachments. All very good things to remember for this card, and also an echo of the Sagittarian qualities, don't you think? The plant on this card is lobella, which I said, which helps us to let go of self-imposed limitations. And if we can think of the devil as the Shekinah, here, lost in the dream of the material realm, yeah? We can think of that as a self-limitation, a self-imposed bondage to the material realm that was created when the creative aspect of the divine, the feminine aspect, came and created the material realm and then got lost in this dream of all this stuff that was materialized, right? And so this plant helps us move our stuck chi, finding our inner peace, and also finding our potential to not escape but release our sense of imprisonment in the material realm. And that's how we can participate in divine generosity, yes? By releasing our addictions and our attachments to our material, physically embodied human selves, and giving over more to our eternal natures, here having the human experiences. Not leaving the human experience, but associating ourselves more with that eternal spiritual nature here in physical form. Receiving divine support, receiving the promise of, I'm not going to destroy you again by drowning you, right? And so the last card, what sacred boundaries would help? You know, the Knight of Wands, we think of the hothead riding off with inspiration. I'm going to go out and do something, right? For me, the Knight of Wands points towards Sagittarius, which again, with the devil, both of them are mutable fires, energies, and entering this spread. Yes? So, the Knight of Wands with mutable fire is the eternal explorer, the energy to travel, and our philosophical curiosity, which comes from Jupiter as well. So we've also got the generous nature of Jupiter entering here through Sagittarius. Divine generosity. And here, with sacred boundaries, are also informed by Saturn and Jupiter in conversation. Jupiter, expansive, generous. Saturn, boundaries, rules, order. In conversation. That's how we can have sacred boundaries. With radical honesty and courage. And sometimes it takes courage and honesty to create a sacred boundary of not defensiveness, but of appropriate interaction. Right? Also luck through action and the courage to say yes to opportunities. So even though we have boundaries, when opportunities come, the Knight of Wands gives us the courage to say yes, and maybe we can expand those boundaries. So the creator of the Herbal Tarot, looking at this card, points towards bravery, but caution against bravado and intensity. So we don't want to go overboard, right? And it's best to work overcoming our personal shortcomings and limitations, not dominating or controlling others. So, yes, within our boundaries, the work we want to do is to overcome our personal shortcomings. Remember, that work of the Egyptian Decan is echoed here a little bit. We want to direct our energy to spiritual growth within our sacred boundary. Yes? And the plant here is aconite, which aids us to overcome the potential indifference and apathy that can arise during Tauran times, perhaps. It stimulates our inner fire and helps us to move from fixed conditions, Tauran being fixed, right? We can move from our fixed conditions and our need for security with the inner fire that is fed by Sagittarius. Doing the inner work of what? Overcoming our personal shortcomings. And overcoming potential indifference and apathy. Yes? So that we can be generous within sacred boundaries. Does that make sense? So, allowing a little bit of Jupiter and a little bit of fire and a little bit of Sagittarius into our Decan, this 10 days, will benefit us and others because we are going to be more secure. We're going to be less attached to the material and more philosophical, more spiritual, more energized. Within the construct of the boundaries set by Saturn and doing the work of Capricorn. Does that make sense? If it does, let me know in the comments below. If it does not, let me know in the comments below. I'd really love to hear from you. Yes, friends? So, friends, here we are. This is the third Decan of Taurus, keyed to Capricorn, and through which we have Saturn in Taurus, which gives us the cardinal aspect of fixed Earth's vital attributes entering this 10-day period. Are you good? Okay, friends, thank you. And I hope that your Decan is brilliant and wonderful and enjoyable and generous. And now, as always, I wish you love, joy, well-being, and pure awareness. Thank you.